My name is Arba Kumsin and I will be your host for the next half hour on Election Brief on your election headquarters. Our lead stories today: President Akufo-Addo has set Ghana's democracy back 28 years. That's according to opposition leader and former President John Dramani Mahama. Also, Electoral Commission says data from its just-ended nationwide registration exercise justifies its push to have a new electoral roll compiled.
So what we are saying is that without the compilation of the new voters register, the Commission was on track to register some 90 million people plus another 800,000 people who remain on the multiple list. This would have given us a total number of almost 19.6 million persons. Approximately 20 million had we maintained the old register and done the limited registration, as compared to the current figure of 16.63 million. Some 3 million difference.
Also, former executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Professor Karikari, cast doubt over political parties' claim of disbanding their vigilante groups.
I don't know, therefore, where some of the violence is coming from. If you have a politician wielding guns in the public, can I believe that the vigilante group of that party is dismantled? Why are there so many guns running around in this country?
We are live on your DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144, and on your digital television because we're free to air. Stay tuned. Thanks again for your time. Now, our former president and flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress, John Dramani Mahama, has accused President Akufo-Addo of setting Ghana's democracy back 28 years by destroying and politicizing institutions. The opposition leader names the judiciary, military, and audit service in the list of organizations which have been compromised by the presidency. Government has faced criticism from some quarters, especially the opposition party, for the perceived control of these institutions in their 3.5-year tenure. John Mahama and the NDC believe the only way to restore the dignity of these bodies is to vote the current administration out of office and send them back to the Jubilee House. Here are extracts of the former president's statement. And it reads, "The tragedy of the Akufo-Addo administration is not only the colossal debt it has saddled Ghanaians with. It is not only the huge physical deficit he has created even before COVID-19. It is not only the hundreds of projects he has abandoned, causing taxpayers' money to go waste. It is not only his poor infrastructure record. This particular tragedy is in the destruction and politicization of our institutions, a judiciary that lacks impartiality, an oppressed parliament, a pliant electoral commission, an auditor general hounded out of office, a misused military, anti-corruption institutions in bondage, an intimidated media, a terrified moral society. These constitute the tragedy of the 4 years of Akufo-Addo's administration. He has set our democracy back 28 years. This is what makes it a patriotic duty for all patriotic Ghanaians to join hands to rescue our nation. I, John Dramani Mahama, will restore dignity and independence to our state institutions. I will depoliticize our democratic institutions and make them work effectively and independently for all Ghanaians. Ghanaians will respect the judiciary once again. Justice will be impartial, and Ghanaians will be able to express themselves freely once more without fear of harassment or death." So those were extracts of the former president's statement, and he's named it Tragedies of the Akufo-Addo Administration. Pius Enam Hajide is Deputy Information Minister, and he joins us via Zoom. Thank you very much for your time. We'll also be joined by Felix Kwachi Fusu. He's with the Opposition National Democratic Congress. So let's start off with you, Mr. Hajide. The president has been accused of stagnating the country's democracy and drawing us back. What's your reaction to that?
Well, thank you very much, Araba. Good afternoon to you and to your viewers. I think that what is rather tragic is the attempt by the former president, Mr. Mahama, to resort to name-calling, running down of state institutions, and sometimes peddling of outright falsehoods in a bid to gain political traction and to win the votes of Ghanaians. We are guided by the admonition of His Excellency the President that these year's electioneering campaigns should be about the track record, the solid track record of competence and solid governance, which is reflecting on the ground. And we would move away from such baseless and groundless allegations as has been made by the former President, Mr. Mahama. And if I may take just a few examples. For instance, he speaks of the Auditor General, and I am scandalized that for somebody his stature to suggest that the mayor asking a public office holder to proceed on leave amounts to stagnating the democracy and drawing us back. It's greatly scandalizing to me because under his watch as vice president, precedent was set and similar action was taken where a public officer, in fact, the Auditor General, was asked to proceed on leave. If it was unconstitutional at the time, or if it was constitutional at the time, then it is constitutional today. And for me, it is only a mark of high hypocrisy, double standard, and maybe desperation that today somebody will look upon an action which he, as vice president, indeed superintended today to be unconstitutional and describe it in those terms. Number two, the former president speaks about debts, and I am surprised because the revenue that is available to this government, including loans, the results of those revenues are clearly manifest for all to see. It is with those revenues that we are able to resolve DUMSO, for instance. We are able to restore allowances, for instance. We are able to implement free SHS, for instance. We are able to develop the truly unprecedented infrastructure across the length and breadth of this country, not infrastructure in Accra and a few selected cities to gloat about, but infrastructure that is spread across the entire length and breadth of this country. That is the same revenue that is helping us to be able to implement the planting for food and jobs, for instance. And I can go on and on.
Right.
It is with the same revenue that we are able to manage and navigate our way around COVID-19 and the several social interventions that this government is rolling out. So when he speaks of the debts, I invite him to avert his minds to the results that are clearly manifest on the ground and to move away from name-calling, resorting to the peddling of falsehood, like he did a few days ago when he insisted and suggested that His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo has had 8 years in government, whilst everybody knows that this government is barely 3.5 years in government. Mr. Mahama suggests to us that we have done 8 years. Indeed, we have done just 3.5 years. We accept the invitation to compare even the 8 years that he had with the
very well, Mr. Hajide.
His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo has done.
Very well.
You will find out. Hello.
So let's talk about the Auditor General, because you also made mention of that. He references it as well, and he says that Mr. Domelevo was hounded out of office. In fact, it's a position that is backed by anti-corruption agencies. In fact, the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition issued a statement on that when that incident came up. The matter, as we know, is now in court. So how do you not agree with those who argue that, indeed, you hounded the Auditor General out of office?
Well, factually speaking, Mr. Domelevo is not out of office. He is still the Auditor General of Ghana. He's just on leave. Fact one. Fact two is that the president acted with due regard to relevant laws of this country, including the Labor Act and relevant sections of our Constitution. Fact 3 is that there is precedent, and which precedent occurred during the tenure of Mr. Mahama when he was vice president. So is he accusing his own administration of engaging in an illegality and an unconstitutionality by asking the then Auditor General to also proceed on leave? I hold the view, and this government respects the view of every individual or institutions, but on this matter, we respectfully disagree with the view that some people, even be they in civil society, may hold. And the fact that we have a listening government and there is precedence that the government can listen and do amend positions on other matters does not mean that the government is stopped from insisting on something if the government believes that on that particular matter, that is the position to take. So again, the attack on the judiciary is quite unfounded. The NDC itself, led by Mr. Mahama, has proceeded to the courts on several occasions to look for settlement of matters. It is that same institution that he resorts to, that he now denigrates and insults in this brazen partisan political manner. And I think that that is unbecoming of a former president and somebody who aspires to once again occupy the high office of president. I think it's unbecoming of Mr. Mahama to go on an attacking spree of state institutions this manner.
Thank you so much for your time. That's Deputy Information Minister Pius Hajide there. And let me just put it out there that we had reached out to the NDC for some clarification on the former president's statement. As and when we get them, we will be bringing it in subsequent bulletins. Now, the Electoral Commission says data from its just ended nationwide registration exercise justifies its push to have a new electoral roll compiled. Provisional data put out by the EC today has a total of registered Ghanaians at 16.6 million. Or Deputy Chairperson Dr. Bosman Asari says this is consistent with data from the Ghana Statistical Service regarding the total number of Ghanaians above the age of 18. He's been addressing a news conference in Accra earlier today.
We've been hearing people are talking about the 2019 register. Had a total of 16,845,420 voters. 16,845,420 voters. Apart from this, we also had 797,493 people quarantined, who were quarantined. In other words, they were prohibited from voting. These people were on the duplicates and the exceptions list. The political parties are aware of this. This list was gathered from 2012. People who tried to register double, so they were prevented from voting. And these people make up almost 800,000. So when this is added to the registered voters of 2019, what it means is that overall the total registered will be 17.6, a little over 17.6 million Ghanaians. Had the Commission maintained the old register and conducted a limited registration exercise in all electoral areas and registration centers across the country, we would have estimated to conservatively, that's at the minimum, add about 2 million Ghanaians onto the existing register. And I know this is basic mathematics. 16.8 plus 2 billion will give us what? 18.8. Is that not so? So what we are saying is that without the compilation of the new voters register, the Commission was on track to register some 90 million people plus another 800,000 people who remain on the multiple list. This would have given us a total number of almost 19.6 million persons. Approximately 20 million had we maintained the old register and done the limited registration, as compared to the current figure of 16.63 million. Some 3 million difference. With the compilation of this register, those on the duplicates exception list from 2012 have had the opportunity to also register. And still the Commission is well within about 52%, 53% of Ghana's population. In conclusion, the Commission's objective of ensuring a credible register is on track. With an estimated population of 31 million Ghanaians, many experts will agree that a voter population between 50% to 55% of the total population for a country in sub-Saharan Africa like Ghana is completely acceptable.
Well, Dr. Bosman Asare also noted that this will be the last mass register to be compiled. He explains why.
This commission has said that this is going to be the last time where we are going to compile a mass register like this. And even beyond that, the commission is anticipating that in future register compilation, that when we are adding people onto it, everyone will come with an identity document, which is the passport and the Ghana card. So that's why we want to do everything possible. The duplication process has been triggered. We want to make sure that all those who don't qualify to be on the roll are removed. We are doing everything possible to ensure that we have a register that is very credible, so that we won't come back to Ghanaians and say we are going to do that. But this commission has made that point very clear, that we are only going to be adding on to this particular register. So no new register, at least in the next foreseeable future.
So let's do some analysis of the issues that have been raised at that EC press conference today. We're joined by President of Policy Think Tank Imani Africa, Franklin Cudjoe. Many thanks for your time. Now, consistently, we've heard from the Commission that the previous register was bloated and not credible, and that this particular registration exercise has justified that. Are you assured by its justification?
Well, first of all, those claims are just akin to the NPC Director of Communications claim that the Bulgarian
Mr. Cudjoe,
can you hear me?
Yes, but the line is not too good. If you can reposition yourself. Much better now. Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that those comments are akin to the NPP Director of Communications claims that the Bulgarian vote has always increased. When consistently, after every roll, the Bulgarian voter population is almost reached. First of all, I don't know if you understand what he means by
Well, it seems that the line to Mr. Franklin Cudjoe is not the best. We'll try and reconnect with him again. But of course, the story is that the EC has been justifying why it compiled this particular registration electoral roll. And he says that the just ended nationwide registration exercise justifies its push to have the roll compiled. According to the Commission, today, the total registered Ghanaians the number of total registered Ghanaians is 16.6 million. That's the provisional data put out by the EC. And it says that it's consistent with data from the Ghana Statistical Service, particularly regarding the total number of Ghanaians above the age of 18. And we've been hearing from Dr. Bosman Asare, who is Deputy Chairman of the Electoral Commission. Asare, as you heard there, has also been explaining why this will be the last mass register to be compiled. You're still here with me, Araba Kumsin, on Election Brief. And I do understand that Mr. Franklin Cudjoe is back on the line. Mr. Cudjoe, please pick up from where you left off.
Yes, as I was just saying, that the permutations made by the EC justifying the need for this new register is unfounded, because if you look carefully, the rate of increase has always been pretty consistent since 2012, since we went biometric. So it is not true that they are giving all this credence to the fact that there should have been a need for a register. The statistics bear us out. Even his claim that almost 53%, which is a departure of 56% under the previous rule, if we took into consideration the fact that there was a pandemic, the registration days in itself was reduced from the usual 40 to almost how many days? About 5 more days. The projections they have is pretty much what we'd have expected anyway. So there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there is some sudden, abrupt, unexpected, and inexplicable events leading to this inflation situation. It really doesn't bear the evidence doesn't bear it as at all. If you do an analysis of the data, you see that it's pretty much consistent, which is why we're saying that it was needless to have conducted this whole exercise, really.
Dr. Bosmanasari also makes the point that this will be the last mass register to be compiled. I mean, you've had cause to doubt the credibility of the rule, even with all the assurances they've given. But from where you stand, has all that is required been done to ensure that we don't go back to compiling another register when a new government, for example, assumes office?
First of all, this register was obtained under duress, under all the state's power, almost all the three arms of government. In a way, managed to suppress the process. I mean, managed to arrange the process in such a way that people who had legitimate cards were excluded. Now, if you realize that almost 40% of the roll is made out of people who were vouched for, and Codio's data that almost 30% of the registration centers had dubious guarantors, it beggars belief why anybody would think that this register is so credible. I mean, you went on saying that the old register is not credible because people had ineligible cards. But you were willing to have almost 30% of your polling stations, resulting in almost 40% of your own data of guarantors, of guaranteed voters, whose fidelities are dubious at this stage. So the point really is that it doesn't lie in the mouth of the EC to be saying that they've done a yeoman's job, and so there'll be no need for any mass registration in the future. I submit, and in my view, really, that what was sought to be obtained, a credible register, is not. Because there are potentially 40% of registrants.
Right. Right. All right. Many thanks for your time. That's Franklin Cudjoe. He is president of Imani Africa, which is a policy think tank. Now, former executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Professor Karikari, has cast doubt over political parties' claim of disbanding their vigilante groups. According to him, the recent wave of acts of violence at registration centers indicate that the vigilante groups are still active. He spoke to JoyNews at a workshop organized by the Media Foundation for West Africa for political party communicators on the need to campaign based on issues and not insults.
In this country, in terms of political campaigning, the language used avoids, for instance, ethnic hatred. You rarely hear a politician campaigning very directly and openly concerning hatred for this or that ethnic group, which is very good for us in this country. Rather, what is disturbing is the growing hateful language against opposing political parties. And that is something that we must avoid. But what is even more disturbing is the incidence of violence, political violence against, or threats of political violence against opponents. Apart from actual acts of violence and threats of violence, what is also disturbing is the use of language of threats to violence against other political parties, against political individuals, even against security agencies. And I think that this is something that we must seriously take a serious view of. Again, as a country, as a democracy, these things appear on the surface as not bad enough, but they can be extremely dangerous. They can be extremely dangerous, especially when you consider that the two major political parties still have vigilante groups. They have been dismantled, disarmed, and dismembered completely.
I mean, that's the point. That, I mean, they claim that they've disbanded their vigilante group.
Well, I don't know, therefore, where some of the violence is coming from. If you have a politician wielding guns in the public, can I believe that the vigilante group of that party is dismantled? Why are there so many guns running around in this country?
And just like that, the program has ended. That's a wrap for Election Brief for today and indeed for the rest of the week. Join us same time next week, every day at 1:30 p.m. on your election headquarters here on the JoyNews channel.